GoForThe2.com. This is my Week 14 preview of the SEC Championship game, the game that is the most important game on Saturday between the second-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide and the third-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. It's the only game that matters. The winner is going to move on to face Notre Dame January 7th. And if you're a college football fan, you have to watch this bowl game. It's must-watch TV. It's a 4 o'clock start. It'll be on CBS, so check it out. I'm going to break down both sides of the ball for you for each team. Let's talk about the key question for Alabama. Can they make it to back-to-back national championship games under Nick Saban? They were left for dead 3 weeks ago in the loss to Texas A&M. They're back in the hunt. They're number 2 in the country, and all they need to do is knock off Georgia, and people are already starting to talk about Nick Saban as the next Bear Bryant. They love him in the state of Alabama, and he has shown why. He's got his team back in the hunt for the national championship game. For Georgia and the Bulldog faithful, can Mark Richt and quarterback Aaron Murray get that signature win over top 10 team and propel them back to supremacy like the good old days of Herschel Walker and head coach Vince Dooley? It's been a long time coming if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, and you could taste the national championship game. All you have to do is knock off the defending national champions, and you're going to have your chance to face Notre Dame January 7th. Both teams are 11-1 overall. Both teams are 7-1 in the SEC, so keep an eye out for that. They're both statistically even. Let's talk about Alabama right now. They're the defending national champions. They're number 2 in the country. Offensively, they're averaging 39 points per game. They're led by their junior quarterback, A.J. McCarron. He's the number 2 ranked SEC quarterback in terms of quarterback rating in the SEC. He's completed 67.2% of his passes, 25 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Both of those interceptions coming in the loss to the Texas A&M. All A.J. McCarron does is win. He's 23-2 as a starter, and he has fans reminding him of Jay Barker. He's already won 1 national championship. He beats Georgia on Saturday. He'll be poised for his 2nd national championship in as many seasons. He's the main reason why the Alabama offense is balanced. He's a leader. He's poised, and he was my Heisman frontrunner prior to the Texas A&M loss. I think he gets back into the mix with a very good performance on Saturday. If A.J. McCarron knocks off Georgia and performs well, you have to think about A.J. McCarron for the Heisman Trophy. So keep that in mind. Does McCarron have a Heisman performance on Saturday in leading the Crimson Tide? When you look at the Alabama offense, they're going to be without their starting wide receiver, Kenny Bell. He's out indefinitely. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the Alabama offense. And fellow wideout Amari Cooper, he's going to have to step up. Some of those underclassmen are going to have to step up and make plays and take the pressure off of McCarron in the passing game. The running game is a must in this ball game against Georgia. Alabama averaging 243.6 yards rushing on the road or on a neutral site. They're going up against a defense in Georgia surrendering 134 rushing yards per game on the road. So that's the key matchup if you're an Alabama fan. Can Alabama wear down the front 7 of Georgia? And if they're able to methodically move the football and play their style of football, Alabama and Nick Saban love play action. Look for Doug Nussmeier to mix it up on Saturday. They're going to need the running game of Eddie Lacy and T.J. Yeldon to step up and take the pressure off of McCarron and the passing game. So whether that happens or not, we'll have to see. When you look at the Alabama defense, statistically, they're very, very good. They're stout. They're number 1 in the country, only giving up 9.3 points per game. They're only giving up 69.6 yards per game rushing on the road or on a neutral site, and that's the reason why Alabama's 11-1. That's the matchup, though, for Georgia. Can the Georgia offense run on that Alabama front 7? They're only giving up 69.6 yards per game. They're very opportunistic, the Alabama defense is. They're a +7 in turnover margin on the road. So they create turnovers and they do not turn the ball over, and that's a key strategy for Nick Saban and defensive coordinator Kirby Smart. They're opportunistic and they're able to make offenses break their tendencies and get into their style of game plan. So that's a key matchup for Georgia. Can they run the football against that front seven of Alabama? They're going to need to do so in order to have success on Saturday. If Alabama does have a weakness, I believe it's in the secondary. I know they're led by Robert Lester, and they have two shutdown corners in Ballou and Milner. But they were exploited deep in a couple of contests. Michigan in the loss was able to get the ball deep in the first game of the season. Tennessee was able to get behind the Alabama secondary. They did not give up scoring plays, but the Tennessee wideouts of Justin Hunter and Patterson were able to get the ball deep on the Alabama defense. Also, Texas A&M was able to get the ball vertical on Alabama. So that's a key matchup for the Alabama defense. Will they be exploited by Aaron Murray and the Georgia vertical passing game? I think if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, that's the weakness for Alabama. Whether you can get the ball over the top, though, is the key question, whether you pull off the upset. Let's talk about Georgia right now. Georgia's led by the number one ranked passer in the SEC in terms of quarterback rating. It's Aaron Murray. He's a junior. He's having a very good season, completing 66.6% of his passes, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The Georgia offense is averaging 38 points per game. More importantly, though, for Murray, he has 7 interceptions, but in the last 4 games, he has not thrown a pick. That's very important heading into this matchup against Alabama. Georgia will need to have ball security in order to pull off the upset, and Aaron Murray cannot turn the ball over against the Crimson Tide defense. Aaron Murray, he has a knock on him. He hasn't been able to knock off a top 10 opponent. He knocked off Florida earlier in the season. He didn't perform very well. He threw 3 picks. He's going to need to have a better performance against Alabama in this bowl game should Georgia move on to play in the national championship game. When you look at Georgia's offense, they're very well balanced. They're throwing for 273 yards per game. They're rushing for 190 yards per game. They're ranked 35th in the nation in passing, 39th in the country in rushing. They're very balanced, and that's what has Georgia sitting at 11-1. The key component for Mark Richt and offensive coordinator Mike Bobo to this point in big games, especially in the loss to South Carolina, is they have not shown a tendency to break their game plan and break tendencies. If they think that they're going to go into this ball game against Alabama and do what they've done the previous 12 games, they will lose this ball game. The way you beat Nick Saban and defensive coordinator Kirby Smart is you need to break your offensive tendencies in order to keep Alabama on its heels. You look at what Texas A&M was able to do. They were able to jump out ahead of Alabama. I think that's what Georgia needs to do in this ball game. Georgia needs to have an up-tempo attack. They need to score first, and they need to get into their style of offense. And I believe in this ball game, it has to be up-tempo in order to defeat Georgia, in order to defeat Alabama in this ball game. When you look at the Alabama defense, they usually jump out first, and then they use their heavy offensive line and their defense to wear down teams. Georgia needs to get out of that game plan. They need to strike first and put the pressure on the Alabama offense to keep up. Whether they can do that, we'll have to see, but that's going to be a key component for the game plan for the Bulldogs heading into this ball game. When you look at the defense for Georgia, very good statistically, only giving up 17.7 points per game on the road overall. They're only giving up 17.7 points per game overall. That's 16th in the country, statistically very well. Rushing, they're only giving up 134 yards rushing on the road or on a neutral site. They're going to have to step up. Jarvis Jones and Alec Ogletree are going to have to be used in blitz packages to to stop the running game of TJ Yeldon and Eddie Lacy and to get some pressure on the Alabama offensive line, Barrett Jones and Chance Warmack. Look for Jones and Ogletree to be used in Todd Grantham's run blitzes to get some pressure on the Alabama offense. When you look at the Georgia defense, they're led by nose tackle John Jenkins. He's a load. He forces offensive lines to double team them. That's going to be a key factor heading into this bowl game. Does the Alabama offensive line, can they handle John Jenkins in this ball game? If they're able to use one player on him and not double team John Jenkins, they're going to have success running the football. But if John Jenkins is able to create double teams, that's going to allow Jarvis Jones and Alec Ogletree to roam and get within running lanes. So that's going to be a key matchup heading into this ball game. When you look at the Georgia defense, they were exploited against South Carolina in that ball game. South Carolina was able to get the ball deep on Bakari Rambo. That was his first game back, well, basically his second game back for a suspension. He played against Tennessee in the week prior, but he was rusty. That was basically his first week back against South Carolina and Ogletree in that ball game. They did not look very well, but they're playing very well as of late. Georgia's going to need to create turnovers in this ball game and put some pressure on A.J. McCarron and the Alabama offense. That's going to be the matchup if you're a Bulldog fan. When you look at this matchup, this game is being played in Georgia. Georgia has not fared very well in the Georgia Dome. They lost the SEC championship game last year against LSU, and they lost the opening season game to Boise State in the Georgia Dome. They're going to need to start fast, and they're going to need to feed off the home crowd in this ball game to get the upset. When you look at this matchup, I think Georgia's playing very well, and I think that they get the upset over Alabama. I think the injury to Kenny Bell is going to put a lot of pressure on A.J. McCarron and the vertical passing game to perform. I like the secondary led by Bakari Rambo. I like the fact that Georgia is playing at home. I think they get some turnovers, and I think they pull off the upset and stun Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think it's a rematch of the 1981 Sugar Bowl. I think Georgia and Notre Dame will play in the national championship on January 7th. We're going to watch the whole week's action. I'll have the whole week picks up on the website at goforthe2.com on Thursday. I'll have a video as well, so stay with us at goforthe2.com. You have to watch this game. I'm calling for the upset. Georgia knocks off Alabama. Notre Dame and Georgia will play January 7th in the national championship game.